Japan's Sengoku Jidai, an era of war, betrayal and death, had lasted for over a century, claiming the lives of millions through the fighting, famine and disease it brought. The feudal lords had realized that their power was sufficient to defy the established government, and their ambition to create governments of their own blinded them to everything that was being lost in the constant battles across the islands. Those who had seen the start of the fighting grew old and witnessed their children and grandchildren sucked into the fray as well. It seemed like there could be no hope for the war to end. Like all things though, it did end, and the beginning of that end was in 1543, when the first Europeans accidentally discovered Japan, and the Japanese discovered the secret knowledge that these so-called barbarians possessed. Lord Otomo Yoshiaki of eastern Kyushu saw in the Nanban great opportunity and great danger. He was the only lord who realized the implications of their technology, of how far they had traveled, of how emissaries from all across Asia seemed familiar with them already. These Nanban were the most powerful force the world had known. And as a man of ambition himself, he knew that their arrival in Japan would cause them to look upon it with greedy eyes. It was then he formulated his plan with twofold intention: to honor his family by raising the Otomo to greatness, and then to make Japan a match for the foreigners, so that the safety of the nation could be secured against their inevitable betrayal. To do this, he needed their secrets, their help. So he had to make a trade: gold and slaves for Nanban technology. The Nanban eagerly accepted the offer. With new matchlock firearms, considered strategy and firm discipline, Yoshiaki conquered the southern island of Kyushu. The Nanban arrived in ever greater numbers to profit from his thirst for more weapons, and to preach their strict religion, a religion that spoke of a master god controlling everything. It was a faith that offered answers, forgiveness and hope. It was exactly what those who were enduring the darkness of the age of warring states needed. It spread rapidly to all corners of the island. To the rest of Japan, the Otomo family were traitors, cooperating with a mysterious foreign power, and forsaking the spirits that had guided Japan and its people since its very creation. And yet, for all their hate towards the Christian Otomo, they could not stop them from creeping their way onto the mainland. Year by year, armies commanded by Yoshiaki, Kobayakawa Chikaharu, the Otomo's most accomplished general, and Yoshiaki's heavily religious son Yoshishige pushed towards the capital. Time and again the sound of matchlock fire preceded great routs and slaughters of all those who resisted. Yet, time and again, more would stand up to fight, for the fate of those conquered by the Otomo was darker even than death perhaps. They allowed the Nanban to buy prisoners, or anyone who didn't seem to be playing along with the Otomo's plans, as slaves. This was the true secret behind Yoshiaki's success. While slavery was a reality of the time, for Japan, creating slaves in such large volumes and then selling them to a relatively unknown power was detestable. Many Otomo retainers found themselves agreeing with their enemies that Yoshiaki was going too far. A scheme was hatched, led by the Otomo's admiral, Uno Shigenobu, to secretly buy slaves from the market before the Nanban arrived, or to intercept slave transports after purchases had been made in the guise of pirates. This secret operation continued throughout the war, with recovered slaves being hidden in the independent Noto Peninsula. Uno would later learn that he was not defying his lord, but fulfilling a request Yoshiaki could not speak for the sake of his relations with the Nanban. Yoshiaki had appointed the principled Uno to be in charge of the slave trade in order to maximize the probability that it would be sabotaged with perfectly plausible deniability. Not all slaves were saved in this way, but it was enough for Yoshiaki to continue his trade with the Nanban without his own retainers turning against him, and indeed without Japan being too far weakened. When Yoshiaki's second son, Tsugutsura, entered the capital at Kyoto in 1563, the clan's power became sufficient for Yoshiaki to begin calling himself Shogun, and for his people to have no choice but to bow in submission to his might. The rest of Japan was not so impressed. The brazen actions of Yoshiaki and his family forged grudges innumerable from west to east. When the prominent Takeda clan declared a coalition against the Otomo, everyone who did not already call Yoshiaki their liege called him their enemy. The civil war no longer had 100 sides but only 2. Those who supported the new Christian shogunate, and those who would take anything but that. In this new phase of the war, Nanban troops from the other side of the world were found among the Otomo ranks, outclassing the Japanese with their pure steel equipment and equally refined techniques. Their presence made it clear to the coalition that they were fighting not just traitors, but the shadows of a powerful foreign master. Fighting with everything at stake, they gave the Otomo their greatest test. For 5 years the fighting raged, with the Otomo winning every decisive engagement. Such a string of victories seemed impossible, but the Nanban-inspired leadership of Otomo Tsugutsura, the Barbarian prince, was proving extremely effective. This created a problem though, for his popularity and moderate attitudes made him arguably a more suitable future shogun than the established heir Yoshishige. Both men had their supporters, and Yoshiaki could see a fresh course for civil war approaching. He knew that Japan needed to unify quickly, for the Nanban had already been given decades to scheme against them. A defense needed to be established before they came seeking further wealth and further control. While Kobayakawa led the other retainers in mopping up their foes, the Otomo family gathered on the unsecured island of Shikoku for an important meeting. It was here that Yoshiaki revealed he was in a state of ill health, and that he had a plan to decide who should be shogun in his stead. He sent out Yoshishige and Tsugutsura to prove themselves to the clan by conquering the island shortly before he passed away. Yoshishige was shogun for the interim, but in name only. In fact, the state simply operated as if there was no shogun, leaving Kobayakawa as the highest authority in any proximity to the action. The fighting on Shikoku was fierce, with the peasantry constantly rising up to resist the spread of Christianity, and Yoshishige nearly perishing in battle during a disastrous ambush. In the end, though, both of the sons of Yoshiaki had triumphed against the odds. As they gathered up in Tosa, on the southern coast of the island, the clan retainers, led by the assigned overseer of the competition, Admiral Uno, were forced to make an impossible choice, where either option could still cause civil war, or worse.
There's only one viable option. We must recognize Lord Yoshishige's right to the position of Shogun, but also recommend the creation of a new position for Lord Tsugutsura, Supreme Commander, perhaps. What is the Shogun, if not the Supreme Commander? We change what the Shogun is, that's what I'm saying. No one would accept that, least of all Yoshishige. I'm trying to compromise with you here. For those of you that prefer Lord Tsugutsura, would you not feel more at ease if he had control over the military? He would be in a position to stop any of these wild Nanban conspiracies you're paranoid about. If you take away Lord Yoshishige's rights as shogun, it will be a disgrace. He will have no choice but to fight Lord Tsugutsura to reclaim his honor.
Gentlemen, please remain civil. No shouting.
Apologies, my lord. We have debated in circles for too long.
Yes, I must say there seems to be a pattern. Half of you wish for Lord Tsugutsura to become our shogun, yet you cannot overcome Lord Yoshishige's rights and popularity. It seems that the unknown plans of the Nanban are the critical factor at play here. If anyone knows them, it's Lord Yoshishige, but they are strictly to have no input on this decision, as I said.
Then we must trust him, is that not right? He is our leader. We simply cannot second-guess him. We're saying he shouldn't be our leader. He's simply not shogun material. He cannot rule while the fighting continues.
I said no shouting, and that goes for all of you. I've had enough anyway. Tomorrow we shall resume discussion again. And remember, none of you are to leave the castle until we are done. Far to the east, in the castle at Edo, a more productive meeting was being held. A delegation of the remaining coalition daimyo was escorted into the hall of Kobayakawa Chikaharu.
On behalf of the shogunate, I accept your surrender, my lords. Your people fought with valor and deserve nothing less than peace and protection.
Your words reassure us, General. However, is it true that you can speak for the entire will of the shogunate?
No.
It would be easier to bow were we to know that a blade was not being raised over our heads.
I understand. You will not be harmed by any of my troops or subordinates. I will recommend to the shogun that he follow me on this path.
He follows you, does he?
You know what I meant.
We have heard of the disputed succession, General. So tell me, who is the shogun?
The news has not reached here yet.
That's not... General, allow me to speak only for myself. My entire family has died in this war. It's only me now. I just need you to tell me who it is I can follow, who I must follow. You can't just leave me waiting.
Stay here in Edo tonight, all of you. I will prepare a procession to Kyoto. We shall spread the good news to the people, and go to find out the fate of our country together.
With you?
Yes, my lord.
So be it, my lord. While the debates were being held, the candidates themselves were left waiting in separate wings of Kochi Castle. They could only speculate as to what their father could have wished to come of this increasingly humiliating process. The truth is, I think they will choose Yoshishige. Why? Because it's easier for them. If it was easy, they would have done it already. Oh. What? You said something clever. Thanks, brother. Same time next year? It must be the Nan band that worry them. No one's benefiting from the church taking everything over. Yoshishige might just tear the whole nobility apart. They must see it. You should have told them about your idea with the Japanese church. People would like it. Too late now. Shinto Christian. Maybe I can still do it even with Yoshishige letting the foreigners run free. Dunno. You think about that. I'm gonna head out. Out? Did you forget Father's will? I'm just going to the parlor. The geisha are there. The women, is it? Those are Yoshishige's girls, you know. They'll slit your throat if you give them half a chance. Nah, don't worry about me. I'm a ladies' man. We all make mistakes. On the seas to the south, the patrolling ships were called back ashore early in the morning. It seemed that for a brief time the blockade of the island was going to be lifted. Then new ships were spotted, flying strange colours above their huge sails. Nanban craft, and not those the Japanese had bought and made their own. 11 sail ships lumbered against the wind to crawl into Kochi's heavily guarded harbour. Admiral Uno was summoned to meet with their representative, while Tsugutsura and Yoshishige could only peer from the distant castle windows at the new arrivals. You will take us to meet with your king. That will not be possible at the moment. We will not tolerate any delay. We visited 2 ports already looking for your hideout, and your waters claimed one of our ships. We are in the process of selecting a new leader, I am afraid.
What of Prince Yoshishige? I was told he had become the new king. Is he dead?
No, my friend, I will explain it all. First, though, why don't we arrange for you and your men to have lodgings in the city? It must have been a long voyage.
There is none longer. Yes, quickly, let us have beds and provisions. You will also arrange for me an audience with Prince Yoshishige in the name of Pope Pius V.
Oh, well, I will see what I can do. 11 ships, low in the water even after months at sea. Between 1,000 and 2,000 troops, I expect. If only they'd shown up a week ago, I could have been spared all this pointless debate. Time to get to work. On account of this new arrival, Uno announced a council would be allowed to take place, technically separate from the succession discussion, and therefore it was natural for Yoshishige and Tsugutsura to be invited. As Yoshishige was the nominal shogun, especially in the eyes of the Nanban, he would be allowed to hear what the Portuguese diplomat had to say and lead a debate on how to react to it. In this fashion, the clan retainers would witness his leadership in action and perhaps make up their minds. I am grateful to His Holiness that he grants us such recognition. I will happily accept those terms.
You can't!
Be quiet and stay out of this. Lord Yoshishige, it is important to all of us to hear what Lord Tsugutsura has to say.
Look, those games are over. Enough of this tiptoeing around Father's mad will. It is time to look to the future, and only I have the right and the vision to do that.
Then prove it to us. Let him speak. Then tell us why he is wrong.
No, keep your snideness to yourself, Admiral.
This is a council, and you're not yet Shogun, brother. The clan deserves to hear what I have to say. If you think that wrong, ask them.
Fine, fine. What stupid interjection are you so desperate to make? You're embarrassing our people in front of our guest, you know.
He doesn't understand us. No need to translate any of this. This is for the loyal retainers of the clan. A samurai glared at the diplomat's interpreter and placed his hand over his mouth. My father Yoshiaki told me that we must strive to be like the Nanban, so that we do not simply become their playthings. They are powerful, they've seen the world, they know its history from the beginning, and they see the cosmic plan for how it will end. They are great indeed. I never cease to respect the truth in their teachings. But is it not the case that there is truth in what we Japanese have lived as well? Yoshishige claims that it will be an honor for their church to take control of ours, and all the lands it owns, a bounty that grows by the day. An honor to lose everything. He is just the fool the Nanban need in charge. We've torn apart the shrines, we've torn apart families, but it was necessary to put Japan back together, stronger than ever before. I regret nothing we've done up until this day. But if we continue down the path the Nanban have lain, we shall not become them, we shall become theirs. Listen to Yoshishige, and we will have the barbarians as our masters. No, we don't have to let it be like this. We can take what truths the Nanban brought and synthesize a new way of life using the legacy our ancestors left for us. If the Nanban demand that we ignore the spirits of these islands to placate the jealousy of the Master God, then he is not the loving master that they claim. Cast out the Nanban, I say, so that our enlightened rule can make Japan the masters of Asia. I will make it so as your Shogun. The room was silent as Tsugutsura sat back down. The diplomat had not understood a word of the speech, but seemed to sense that it was not to his benefit, looking up to Yoshishige expectantly. Thank you for that, brother. Clearly none here are willing to recognize the dignity of our guest, so we shall reconvene tomorrow to discuss these matters further.
To make me wait is an even further insult, Lord Yoshishige.
The diplomat's words had no effect, as Yoshishige had already stood and walked away without a response. Servants appeared to guide the furious emissary back to his accommodation. Uno stepped in to stop Tsugutsura from leaving with the rest of the retainers. Your father always believed you had it in you. So did I. What do you mean? You understand what's important. I think you might have moved, Yoshishige, with your plea. I shall be doubling the guard on my door. Wise, my lord. Uno smiled as he directed Tsugutsura to leave by a side exit, returning to his room on the castle's upper levels. At the harbour, the Portuguese troops were seen marching up and down on the waterfront, making a show of force that lasted well into the evening. Such threatening overtones were probably meant to dissuade further disrespect from their chaotic hosts, but it would instead prove to foster a huge mistake. That night, a geisha made an unremarkable visit to Yoshishige's room, bearing a gift.
Is that a Nanban book?
Yes, my lord. A gift from the Kingdom of Portugal to the noble people of Japan. That is what he said. It's a Bible. I recognize these characters. It's in their language. It must be special in some way. I'll have to ask. Maybe inside...
Wait!
What is it? He said not to open it in the presence of a woman, my lord. Is that so? How special it must be then. Fine, forget that for now. Why don't you sit down, Naruko? Some time later, the geisha shuffled away from the room with greater than usual haste. Had you been close, you would have heard her utter, "This is for you, sisters." Tsugutsura. He can only mean well. There was something about all that. Could it be true that we cannot always trust the Nanban to be serving the Lord faithfully? They must have all been thinking the same thing. Oh, what must they have thought of me to be so trusting? I took Tsugutsura's arrogance to be a vice, but he could be right. This could be the final test, to find the true path to the world the Lord desires. He could help me find it. If I concede something to him, the retainers will feel more at ease with my judgment. And if the Nanban are being deceitful, then we would be right to give them nothing. But they gave me something. That book. That night there was a fire in the castle. Witnesses had heard a sound like thunder and found part of the upper level to be suddenly aflame. It was quickly controlled and the damage was only minor, but upon making it to the center of the damaged area, the workers found Otomo Yoshishige, or parts of him, strewn on the floor of his room before the splinters of a table. An emergency council was called and the news was given to the shocked retainers. It was told in the same way the workers had reported it, that he had apparently been struck by lightning, despite the roof remaining intact. It seemed like an act of fury from a displeased god. Could this be the punishment for not agreeing to the Nanban demands? Such a line of thinking took a sudden turn when Tsugutsura appeared with a geisha on his arm, the one who had delivered the late-night gift. She told the assembled retainers that the Nanban diplomat had gifted a strange book to Yoshishige, with instructions for him to open it alone. Her breakdown into bawling tears halted further answers, but a worker was dragged in and questioned instead. A samurai fired an unloaded matchlock in the middle of the hall, and the worker agreed that the smell of the smoke it left was the same that was smoked into Yoshishige's torn clothes. This was no lightning flash, but a blast of black powder, a blast that apparently left the Nanban gift and the table it had been on destroyed. There was still room for doubt, but now the Nanban themselves would seal their own fate. They had decided to bring their whole army to the castle for the day's discussions, hoping to strong-arm a quick resolution to negotiations. Reports of the approaching force reached the upheaval of the castle hall.
Then this is it. They think we're just insects to be toyed with. They killed Lord Yoshishige with a dark trick, and now they'll kill anyone else who doesn't bow to their order.
They can't be doing this. They were here to help us. What is the meaning of this?
Everyone listen. The Nanban think we are easily crushed and care nothing for honor. They are not like us, and they aren't here for our sake. Father always knew that. He knew something like this would happen. Just not so. I'm summoning my troops to avenge my brother. Who will fight with me?
The hall erupted with a war cry and a symphony of drawn swords. Flags and bells on the castle wall signalled the encamped armies to muster, and the castle's own contingent of samurai appeared from all corners of the complex to join the force. Meanwhile, the Portuguese army continued its march, moving without undue haste in the cold, early morning air. From a distance, they could see faintly the fire damage atop the castle, and perhaps took the echo of bells to be in response to a related accident. But then they saw something blocking their way. They saw a sea of colourful flags, gangs of running horses, and streams of men pouring into their path. Immediately, the veteran Portuguese troops loaded their weapons and formed up without orders. The captain of the force looked to the diplomat for a plan, but he seemed paralysed by the sight arrayed before him.
Why did I ever doubt myself? Of course I was right. Father was right. The Nanban possess the power of God but the hearts of the devil. It's time to end this.
The Portuguese men who had been among the Japanese army had, it seemed, already slipped away to join their comrades over the previous 2 nights. But they had already served their purpose in this battle, for prior cases where they had been defeated informed the Otomo as to their weakness. They formed up before the Nanban and began a long-ranged attack with their mortars. Explosive charges fell into the heavily armoured ranks of gunners and pikemen, shattering hardened plate and splintering bones and weapons alike. The captain in charge of the force was hesitant to attack the Otomo, for their army had positioned itself in a tree line, hidden from the view of his matchlock troops. The delay cost him dearly, for he was spotted by the Otomo's rocketeers. Before he could run for cover, he was struck by a soaring bomb and killed unceremoniously. The mortar teams reported their ammunition was dwindling, and the Portuguese force still kept formation despite its losses. The matter would have to be decided with a battle. Tsugutsura ordered his army forwards, leading with his gunners just as his enemy had done. Covered by a last riotous volley of rockets and mortar charges, his men moved up and took aim at the enemy. Above, arrows soared out in support of their attack, but the Portuguese armour was nearly impervious to them. The matchlocks began to fire, punching holes where the arrows had failed. The return fire was as punishingly accurate and quick as the Japanese had feared, but the explosives from earlier had ensured that barely any of the Nanban gunners were fit to fight. They could take many Japanese with them, but they couldn't defeat them all. Fearing an enemy charge, Tsugutsura advanced his spearmen to the front of the army. The Portuguese were of two minds, wishing both to uphold their honour and to flee. One group of warriors made up their minds and charged into the Japanese ranks, hopelessly outnumbered. Inspired by such deeds, the rest of the Nanban steeled themselves and charged in behind them. Running at full pelt and decked out in enough armour to easily break the Japanese spears on impact, they smashed into the front line. The samurai held their ground, but most of the line consisted of weaker Ashigaru troops. These men died by the dozen for every Nanban they slew. The matchlock troops were forced to draw their short swords and bolster the formation, while some found chances to fire their weapons at point-blank range to down distracted opponents. Most of Tsugutsura's army was equipped with bows or specialist equipment like rocket guns, and these things were useless against the armour-plated and experienced troops cutting their way forwards with swords and halberds. His one advantage now was his cavalry, who freely wheeled around to the rear of the Nanban position and charged into the fray. The momentum of their horses gave a common spear the piercing power to break through the Nanban steel. Their presence alone gave heart to the faltering Japanese infantry and forced the Nanban to fight in all directions. Now was the time for Tsugutsura's last card to be played. Some samurai held in reserve rushed forwards into the increasingly chaotic melee. Nothing else could be done but to hope for victory. Tsugutsura's remaining troops would have no chances whatsoever if the battle progressed further. His cavalry were easily beaten by the spears and halberds most of the Nanban wielded, but in driving them away, they thinned out their formation and invited further attacks against them from the main army. It seemed like some of the Nanban were trying to retreat, but whenever their formations broke, they neatly reformed and then continued fighting just as effectively as before. The bodies covering the front line hampered movement and sapped the spirit of those trying to fight among them. Had the foe been other Japanese, Tsugutsura's men might have fled, but against a foreign invader there could be no mercy. Finally, the Portuguese standard was pulled back, and the rest of the army with it. No pursuit was made, for Tsugutsura was certain that if he pressed the Nanban into further fighting, they would inflict even greater damage on his battered army. Rockets, arrows, and a few gangs of horsemen saw the Portuguese off, back towards their ships in the Kochi harbour. After a brief rest, Tsugutsura left the battlefield under the command of his brother Negayuri and nephew Kurishige, himself taking a band of horsemen to follow carefully behind the Nanban. By the time he reached the harbour, there were more than a dozen sail ships floating away. The closest was none other than Uno's black ship. From the forecastle, Uno waved to Tsugutsura and pointed to a warehouse on the edge of the docks. From it, the shogun's personal ship, the Nihon Maru, was being led down the rails from the warehouse to the water, with crewmen clambering aboard from all directions. Tsugutsura raced to join them. Men were swimming ashore from 2 sinking ships in the harbour. A Japanese and a Nanban carrack had been critically damaged in fighting as the 2 sides set to sea. The other 10 had a decent lead on Uno's fleet and an advantage in numbers. He had only 4 carracks, including the black ship. But as the Nihon Maru rowed to catch up with them, the crew witnessed several fleets of Japanese ships launching from all along the nearby shoreline, appearing from beneath sheets and behind rocks to quickly expand Uno's arsenal. Clearly, he had been making some preparations. They could row faster than the carracks could sail in the light wind, so they quickly joined the pursuit. The Nanban sail ships could outpace the Japanese equivalents, but for a reason that did not bring the crew any cheer. Their holds were empty. They were lacking the supplies to make an escape even if they could stay out of cannon range. To have any hope of making it somewhere safe, they needed to defeat Uno's navy and raid a Japanese base. Such a base existed not far from the harbour, a fortified but nearly unmanned island that surely had supplies to weather sieges stashed away inside. The island was also the perfect place to stay out of view of the Japanese while they prepared to make a stand. The Japanese fleet moved around both sides of the island, catching the Nanban before they were fully prepared. Their ships were too close together to fire their vast array of guns at the tiny oncoming boats. That is not to say shots were not fired, and the Japanese craft stood little chance against speeding cannonballs, as the Otomo knew well. But they also knew, through hard experience, the weakness of Nanban-style ships: fire. Most of the Japanese Koboya crews were equipped with rocket guns, able to launch incendiary attacks from a distance against the hulks of wood and cloth that towered over them. They attacked from 2 sides, catching the rear of the Nanban column as it tried to get clear of the shallow waters near the island. Many boats were able to target the sails and decks of the carracks with fire attacks, while staying off their broadsides. Others had to pray for more good luck as shots skimmed the water around them, and of course, they couldn't all be so blessed. Half of the Nanban fleet was slowed by efforts to resist this rear attack, while the rest had made some headway in escaping, only to be intercepted by the column of Japanese carracks to the west, and the second pincer of rocket ships moving up behind them. The Nanban gunners focused on keeping the rocket ships at bay, and indeed they could easily sink them one by one from a great distance, but they were too subject to long-range attacks from the Japanese carracks. Their shots smashed open the Nanban hulls, rendering them vulnerable not only to flooding, but to fire rockets exploding within the holds. Not that keeping the ship's armour intact could offer much protection, as the trailing ships learned when the constant fires started by the rocket attacks became too much to handle. Whole decks went up in flames, with the loss of sails and ropes leaving them floundering, surrounded by hateful foes and wreathed in toxic smoke. For the Japanese crews, the sight was only a passing pleasure, for all around them their own craft were sinking, and most of the boats had taken damage to their hull or crew members. Each boom of the Nanban guns could mean instant death for anyone, but they still held their courage and continued the attack. Several Nanban ships had been disabled, but half of the Japanese fleet had been sunk in the process. The group of Nanban that had been trying to move away from the battle was wheeling back into it to face their pursuers head-on. The Japanese would perish if the Nanban guns could not be silenced immediately, so the bombardment of rockets, arrows and cannonballs intensified. Another carrack was immolated and incapacitated, but a few of them caught a northerly wind and slipped away from the fire ships at speed. Their course brought them closer to the island, where the Nihon Maru had been busy picking up survivors from the sunken first wave. They're moving too far away for our rockets to hit them. They'll sink the rest of our fleet. Battle speed now, row forwards. We'll cut their column and make them stop. We're the only ones who can do this. Yoshishige, you made the wrong allies, but that doesn't mean I'll forgive them for what they did. I'll show the world what any Nanban who kills the Japanese gets, Christian or not.
I spill blood honestly and for the greatness of my family and country. This thing's falling apart. Plug those holes. My head. I have to lie down.
Delayed by the action of the Nihon Maru, the northward column fell under rocket attack again, and another ship was consumed by flames. The Nihon Maru limped away from the engagement with a leaking hull, but that would not let the Nanban go free, for their leading ships had precisely the same problem, only much greater in magnitude. The great mass of the Carrack pushed it ever downwards, bringing the waterline above the gashes inflicted by Uno's cannons. The water then took over, pulling the craft under in a mess of smoke and bubbles. The ships following behind had to stop to avoid a collision and take on the crew now swimming towards them. Even if they had sailed on, the presence of a wreck and two burning ships so close by made any movements difficult. The two ships now heading the column were left enduring rocket attacks. Those behind them turned east to try and escape the chaos, picking up a wind that was taking them yet further from home, but at least got them clear of the massacre. 3 ships in total got away from the Japanese fleet, but 2 of them had already taken extreme damage to their hulls. They could not remain afloat for more than a few minutes, no matter what efforts their crews made. They gurgled down into the shallow waters of the island's shoreline, with the last remaining ship picking up what crew it could save in time, which was by no means all of them. Tsugutsura, suffering from a concussion and temporarily unable to stand, ordered the Nihon Maru to return to Shikoku. The lower decks were already flooded up to the knee in places, and the hull was cracked beyond a quick fix. That left Uno in command of the Japanese fleet, which was by now reduced to just 5 or 6 functional craft from the original roster of 40. Among those still afloat were all of the Carracks, hulls splintered and guns missing all around, but moving in pursuit of the Nanban. Uno's black ship, a particularly big target, had been conveniently sped up by virtue of losing most of its upper decks. Fortunately, the damage was not just above the waterline, but above most of the gunnery positions. Of the 2 Nanban ships mired near the island, one was ablaze, the work of the only surviving rocket Kaboya, and the other was making an escape westward. The only other operational ship was making a break for it eastward, a direction that would lead only to more of Uno's ships along the coast of Shikoku, as they would soon find. The westward ship was targeted by the Japanese Carracks and had a huge chunk of the waterline hull on its stern blown away. No pursuit was needed after that, for it would sink well before slipping out of sight. The Nanban fleet and the army it had carried were defeated. A message had been sent loud and clear back to Europe about Japan's true disposition. It would take months and years to arrive and elicit a response, but for now, the Japanese had begun taking back control, with the Nanban's secrets safely absorbed into their own culture. The Nihon Maru was beached a mile from the harbour, and from there Tsugutsura and his crew marched to meet the rest of the fleet as it came into port. When he arrived, he found a gang of soldiers shouting. Inside the mob was the Portuguese diplomat, who had apparently hidden himself in the local church. Leading the mob was Yoshishige's eldest son, Kurishige.
This man here is representing the Kingdom of Portugal, is that not right?
He said so yesterday, my lord.
Then it is a blessing that he still lives. You must show heaven what a son will do to punish his father's killer.
You want me to kill him, my lord?
Draw your sword and fight him. Give him his chance. Look at those thin arms. There's nothing to worry about.
My lord, I have taken oath to God. I cannot kill him.
He killed your father. You cannot live under the same sky as he.
I understand, my lord, yet I must show forgiveness and trust in the Lord's plan.
This is what the Nanban wanted. An island of pacifists that they could just walk all over. Well, they didn't get me. You, Nanban, up and fight! I'll put Yoshishige at ease, the Japanese way.
The diplomat's interpreter was long gone, but as the soldiers formed a circle around them and gestured to the cutlass on his hip, he worked out what was happening. Tsugutsura drew his sword, quickly and without grace, and stood with no guard in particular, his head hanging forwards and his face locked in an endless wince. The soldiers began to cheer for him and denounce the diplomat with a tone that needed no translation. The Nanban sword was drawn, and over the blade the man spoke unknown words, eyes skyward. Then he fixed himself upon Tsugutsura and hopped forwards with a crude two-handed swing, shouting into the cut with all his might. Tsugutsura caught the blow on his blade, but could not slide away for a counterattack. The heavy European steel had dug into his softer edge, fusing the blades together. The surprise brought on more throbbing pain in his head and a blurring of his vision. He let go of his sword, letting both weapons come down onto his armor. With his hands, he grabbed the diplomat by the neck, letting out a roar and thoughtlessly squeezing as tight as he could. The diplomat dropped his weapon also, trying briefly to grab at Tsugutsura's arms, but finding them immovable. His hands scratched down the samurai's armor plates, one of them coming to rest on the handle of the wakizashi short sword tied around the waist. A shout came from the crowd and there was a disturbance. The blade was clumsily drawn and thrust blindly. Tsugutsura released his grip, but the diplomat was immediately killed by a rapid cut across his back, severing his spine. Behind him, Otomo Nagayuri cast a katana to the ground and then pushed the body of the diplomat atop it. He saw the wakizashi sticking from Tsugutsura's thigh. The crowd drew in around them with cries of shock.
Lean on me, brother. Help me, come on, get him inside. Nanban. Always get what they want.
Be quiet, Tsu. We're going to lie you down in here.
Someone get the surgeon.
By the devil's trickery. It wasn't meant to be like this. The procession carried Tsugutsura through the still open church door and lay him upon a bench beneath a stone relief of Mary, the Virgin Mother of Jesus Christ. He fell unconscious, sparing him from hearing the dire assessment of the surgeon. The blade had cut major arteries, and if removed, death would come quickly. It was a common battlefield injury, and all present knew the prognosis. Leaving the blade in the wound as it was bound was the only way to prolong Tsugutsura's life. Many present used their current venue as inspiration to appeal to God for an intervention. Clan retainers gathered around the bench, kneeling before their lord and the Virgin Mary. It was agreed that they should declare Tsugutsura to be shogun for his final moments, in order to fulfill the orders of his late father. As such talk was concluded, Tsugutsura awoke, as if roused by the power his people had invested in him. Brother, you've won. They killed Yoshishige. Who cares about Yoshishige?
He's your brother.
He was going to betray us.
I don't know about that.
Well, you are shogun now, brother. I know it's hard to think, but you must name an heir.
Not Kurashige or Sugisada. They are with the enemy.
If you think I'm doing it, you've got another thing coming.
No one wants you to do it. Calm down.
Easy there. I have feelings, you know.
Too bad. There's only one who can do it. You need Nane.
Nane?
You can't make a girl shogun. She's unmarried, you idiot. Listen to me. These are my orders as shogun. First and final orders, it seems.
Spring broke in Kyoto, and with the coming of the cherry blossoms came the festival of Hanami to the imperial court. Amid the quiet celebration of this natural beauty, lords from all over Japan gathered in the gardens for 2 days of official ceremony. On the first day they laid to rest and mourned Shogun Yoshiaki and the brothers Yoshishige and Tsugutsura, the men who had done so much to build the Japan they now resided in. Their former subordinates Kurokawa, Daihoji and Kobayakawa came to speak of the differing virtues that each Otomo leader had impressed them with. Hearing these tales brought great emotion to the lords of the coalition, who for the first time understood the brilliance their forebears had struggled against, and came to appreciate that the Otomo clan may have earned their power not just through terror or foreign magic, but through personal bravery, dedication, innovation, and a clear sense of what it meant to be a samurai. On the second day came a much louder event: the marriage of the young Otomo princess Nane, Yoshishige's eldest daughter, to the man who Tsugutsura had wished to join the Otomo family, Kobayakawa Chikaharu. He had seen the entire rise of the Otomo from the very beginning and had been trusted as Yoshiaki's closest retainer, and then, eventually, as the supreme commander of the Otomo army. In all roles he had been unfalteringly successful and was known to all samurai as an extremely accomplished commander. Now, changing his name to Otomo Chikaharu, he would become head of Japan's military government as shogun. While the lower orders questioned the passing over of more direct inheritors such as Kurishige or Nagayuri, the upper classes were happy that a man famous for his principles and his skill had come to power. And indeed, most clans at that time had leadership no longer related by blood to the family of the clan's namesake, for the war had killed off most of the great families already. With the blessing of the emperor, Chikaharu became the nominated head of the Otomo family, the shogun, and now the de facto sole bearer of authority across all the islands. Immediately, many parties petitioned him to revoke or to strengthen this or that law. While Chikaharu did have his personal opinions on many matters, he outright refused to change things too much from that which his predecessors had already established. Of particular significance was the matter of the church, which was laying claim to and privately taxing most of the fiefs that had lost their owners during the war. On this matter, he knew that while Yoshishige had technically held to Yoshiaki's path, it was Tsugutsura who had known and understood Yoshiaki's spirit, his true intent. He arose a new nobility from those loyal to the new shogunate, cementing the Otomo family's position for the next generation or two, and cutting the powers of the church while there was no Nanban present to resist. He ended the mandatory practice of Christianity and made a deal with the former coalition lords to ensure their cooperation. Both Buddhism and Christianity would be allowed, neither forced upon people but neither discouraged, and the people would simply have to find their own path to the truth. This would be his most long-lasting legacy, both in what would be celebrated about his rule and what would be scorned. With Christianity holding itself superior to the pagan-esque Shinto Buddhism traditions, religious rivalry and conflict would continue long after the formal war was over, and a century later provoke the Pope in Europe to call what we now know as the Final Crusade. Such a far-off reality was scarcely on the minds of the Otomo clan in that happy summer of 1572. The Great Civil War, the Sengoku Jidai, had reached a stable conclusion, and peace was something of a guarantee for the lifetimes of any seeking the cool shade of a stone church or breezy pagoda during that especially warm year. So, no more trade with the Nanban, my lord? No, I'll announce it tomorrow. We need to build this country on our own from now on. Besides, we're done with weapons for now, so they have nothing else to offer us. I am pleased to hear that, my lord. You don't have to bother with the formalities, Shigenobu. We couldn't have done all this without your help. You could have asked for much more than just Noto as your fiefdom. Oh, you know me. Just trying to keep my name out of the history books in case it all ends badly. You think it will? Well, I think it's not over, suffice to say. No, it isn't. The Nanban cannot bear to have a rival who isn't of their own ilk. This could become more than Japan and Portugal.
It could be all Europe taking vengeance on all Asia.
A worrying thought. Yet they are reassuringly far away.
Yes, that is true. General Kurokawa keeps saying we should take an army there to punish them further.
Ask him to build a castle or two. I think it will get him his fix for glory, and if the Nanban come back, we'll be stronger for it. And speak to your uncle, Nagayori. He's got all these drawings of little Nanban castles that resist cannon fire. Obsessed with them all of a sudden. If it works, that's going to be very useful.
A fine idea. Are you sure I can't tempt you to stay as an advisor? I need an excuse to get that curmudgeon Daihoji out of my court.
No, please. I've become rather familiar with Noto over these decades, and indeed the people there on my account. I think I'd like to make up for what we did to them by making sure they are treated right.
You were too good for the shogunate.
And too impure for the temples. On that note, I noticed your brothers made a quick exit.
Yes, it's the geisha. It's too sinful for them.
I see. Are all the Nanban so inclined?
If so, we won't have any more problems from them after a few decades.
Oh, well, that's awfully hopeful, isn't it?
That's my job. Got to bring hope to all Japan.
Ah, yes. You'll have to be our Lord and Saviour, Shogun. May Japan have no master but you and yours, no friends who seek us in chains, and no gods but those we feel in our own hearts.
Amen.
The Dutchman is here, my lord.
Send him in.
Your Majesty, King Otomo, Shogun Otomo, you honor me. I am Gerard.
They told me all about you already, sir.
They?
You know who I mean.
Of course. Must have been plenty of time for gossip with your parliament acting as it is.
Are you here to apologize for that?
It was a fair deal. You'd be dead or Catholic if it wasn't for my former employers.
Former? I have no use for you if you're not with the Empire.
I'll convince you to the contrary. The Empire is collapsing. The revolutionaries are going to win, and I don't think any of us want to end up in their communes after this.
You want Japan to crush your subjects, is that it?
No. We, the club, that is, want Japan to take the reins of this world, and I'm going to help you.
What?
No one ever believes me when I tell them things like that. Don't be fooled, you have no choice. Come on, we'll start the planning right away.